Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. I was very surprised to see Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared had a sequel, as shock videos do not usually lend themselves to sequels. The purpose of a shock video is to lure the viewer into a false sense of a peaceful, calm, or otherwise pleasant experience, and then breaks those expectations in the most disturbing way possible. So if viewers of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 2 are likely familiar with the first video, how are the changed expectations going to affect the viewing? The first time I saw Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 2, I actually didn't really like it at all. It mirrored the first video far too perfectly. It starts out as what appears to be a very low-budget children's television show that doesn't really even make sense if you think about it too much. The way to be creative is to think creatively. The future doesn't exist? I guess that's kind of true in a way, but that's not how I'd say it. I don't really get what they're going for there. Then the weird-looking red puppet thing talks about how skeptical and unenthused he is about the subject. That sounds really boring. We don't really want to. We're going to miss our show. A little later, the character doing the teaching unexpectedly destroys whatever the other characters were working on. That was a kinda good little clown painting. Why do you have to pour the black paint all over it? Hey, that bird was enjoying making the card house. That wasn't very nice. Then finally the lyrics drop out and the aesthetic turns really dark and disturbing. What's going on? What's going on? So I kind of didn't like it after just watching it that first time. It was very much the same thing, and I didn't have any reason to really want to watch the same kind of disturbing thing twice. But then I noticed that it actually works pretty well as a regular old sequel. We pick up where we left off. The characters are being very uncreative after having been so graphically discouraged from creativity. And the characters are a little more fleshed out. The red guy's pretty unenthused and just kind of is being dragged along. The bird is interested but skeptical and asks a lot of questions. And the yellow guy is just struggling to keep up and figure out what's going on. So I actually thought there is kind of a little bit of potential for it to become, like, maybe not a whole series, but I wouldn't be disappointed if there was a third one. And beyond that, this is more of a slow decay into madness than a shock video, which kind of puts it in enough of a different genre that is pretty cool. Normally, you'd say a descent into madness, but in this case, the word decay is more appropriate. As a whole, the video starts out fairly coherent, and then just decays into and slowly the disturbing aspects come up more and more obviously. So the visually disturbing end isn't so much a twist ending as it is the climax of something that's been building through the entire video. Within the larger video as a whole, there are many, many examples of smaller decays. Let's look at the part with the fish as an example, but you can take pretty much any section and they all are structured about the same. It's 20 past 8. There's fish on my plate. This little couplet sets up our expectations. It's kind of bouncy, has a nice little meter to it, and it rhymes. It's 20 past day. There's fish on the tray. While this fits perfectly into the rhyme scheme and the meter, what the heck is 20 past day? It's 11 to 12. There's fish in the bath. Okay, that's pretty weird too, and it also doesn't rhyme anymore. It's 9:30. There's fish everywhere. Yeah, the meter is completely forgotten, there's no rhyme, and it doesn't make any sense at all at this point. Seriously, look at every individual little section. They all start out normal and slowly, piece by piece, turn pretty disturbing, or at the very least nonsensical. Besides all of those structural decays, you also physically see decay several times throughout the video. You watch the apple rot. You see the difference between a living and a dead tree. That yellow guy's dad is like a really scary old version of him. And then of course there's the end. Interestingly, the only living things that we see flourish are the maggots that you see over the end credits. And maggots flourish when things are decomposing. And it does take a moment to portray technology and gadgets and all that stuff, but I think that part's kind of tongue-in-cheek. And outside that sort of advertisement that the clock is talking about, when you actually see technology in action, it's just that creepy looking old guy looking at porn. I kind of have a problem with the attitude that things should be taken metaphorically, and by that I mean that I think it's problematic when we think that works of art like this, if you want to call it art, which I do, have exactly one interpretation in that each aspect of the video represents one thing in real life. I don't know, I just think that's kind of limiting. But overall, I think it's pretty clear that Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 2 paints a portrait of time that is fairly disturbing. I think it's kind of darkly funny that something that is presenting itself as a children's show portrays time as doing nothing but making things worse. That's not what you want to show kids. You want to have them think the future's gonna be better. Oh, and the June 19th thing. I think it's far more likely that June 19th has significance only to the people who made the video, or maybe even is just the day that they shot the original. But yeah, I really don't think there's a historical thing that happened on June 19th. I mean, not a relevant one anyway. Oh, and the title of the film. Do people really not want hugs when they're scared? Isn't physical comfort something that makes people feel better when they get scared? I think it's more likely that what they're talking about in the title is not fear at all, but kind of more a disturbed feeling. At least that's the closest emotion I can think of to fear that makes you want to avoid touching other people. And it's also the feeling that the video actually leaves you with, so it's pretty appropriate. But the fact that they use the word scared instead implies that they're not really thinking too much about what that emotion is, so it makes it seem like it's being told by a child, which I think is appropriate given that it presents itself as a television show for children. Don't hug me.